and welcome back. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, and I want to send all of my warmest regards to all the people who have inquired. And yes, I am now recovered, I'm feeling much better, and my garden has missed me sorely.
Bok, I'm Mandy O. This is Grow, Make, Cook, and welcome to my garden. I grew up in Australia in a permaculture family, but after we got married, Mr. O and I moved here to his home country of Croatia. I am a passionate and hands-on homemaker and gardener, and I love life's simple pleasures. So join me on my journey, and together we can learn to grow, make, and cook. This is the 4th week in March, or Ožujak.
What I'm doing here is just adding a little layer of compost. It's not really mulch, it's as a way of darkening up the soil. My soil is clay, and it's really this very light colour. And so because it's so light, it's very slow to warm up. So what I'm doing is adding a very thin layer of very dark compost that will darken up the soil around these, which are my little radishes, which will make the soil warm up faster and hopefully get us a slightly quicker harvest. They are under the cover of my cloche, so they should be going pretty quickly anyway, but this, I'm hoping, will absorb more heat from the sun and make the whole process just a little bit quicker. The garden is really changing almost day by day at the moment. I've got our very first rocket flowers have popped up, and lots of things are just starting to emerge from the ground. Little green shoots are everywhere, and the chamomile that I planted at the end of last year has come up in abundance. It's not just the tulips and the daffodils and the hyacinths that are just starting to show their little green heads and shoot up in the spring sun. It's the weeds too. But this is actually a very good thing, because if the weeds are starting to grow, that means that the soil is starting to get warm, and that means that it's time to start planting out my vegetables. One of the first things to come out in this early spring weather, when it's still quite frosty at night, I mean, it's still hitting 0 regularly, and occasionally it still hits the minuses. But these guys here won't mind at all, because they're broad beans, and they're a variety called aqua dulce, which is a really good stalwart, really robust variety. I learned quite a lot about this variety of broad beans last year when we had all of that trouble with the voles. And my biggest takeaway from that whole experiment turned out to be that the broad beans that were planted in the ground and not in the raised beds did so much better. So this year I've skipped the less productive raised bed bit, and I've planted all of my broad beans down here in little clumps and drifts in amongst my flowers, and it feels like a much more cottagey, friendly, mixed up sort of style. I'm thinking I'm really liking it. Another thing I'm really excited about, but really looks like nothing at the moment, is these 2 tiny little red-leafed shoots. They're my peonies, and I adore peonies. And to see both of these tubers here, and I planted another one just over there, both of them come up down here, is really, really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these 2 beauties will do in the months to come. As far as my early spring stars go, you really can't go past this Pullman area without stopping to wonder at its beauty. I adore them, and I popped it in here underneath the big plum tree because they're quite a woodland style plant, and I think it's probably the best thing in the garden right now. All those colours. Now, while I was on the road to recovery, I haven't been completely idle. I have been taking cuttings from my black currants, and I have planted out another 2 black currants, and I'm hoping that this will really tie this big long bed together. So I have black currants on one end, and then all the way across I've now got just a handful of little black currants, which will come up and make lovely little shrubs that will give me some consistency through this garden bed. Now, what I have here are those sedums. It's called Autumn Joy, and it's the one I propagated from my sedum from the leaf cuttings from last year. You can still see some of the leaves in the top here from where I took the cuttings, but there's lots of new little growth sprouting up everywhere. And now that the days are consistently getting to more than 10 degrees during the day, I can plant these guys out. They've probably got a pretty substantial root system in there, so it's time to crack them open and start putting them in the ground. I've got a spot prepared here where I've dug the soil over and I've pulled all the weeds out, and it's right in here next to my 2 lovely peonies. So what I'm going to do is pop one of them in here and then start to gently scatter them through this garden bed, working the flowers through in amongst my herbs. So I've got my sage just here, and just beyond I've got some rhubarb and a bit of kale. So I'm kind of working the flowers in amongst my herbs and my vegetables. I'm hoping it's going to give me a really good effect. So first things first is to just tip him out, see what we're working with. And yep, I can see already there's some roots around the outside there. So there's definitely a decent root system on that. Can you see them there? These fine roots are feeding roots. And so that means that we've actually gotten a pretty good take on these little leaf cuttings. So let's break him apart a little bit and see if we can separate out some baby plants. Look at that, that's one right there. He's tiny now, but he'll grow up, hopefully, some nice tall flowers right up here. Probably, I don't know, 40 centimeters high-ish. And it'll give me some nice height right at the front of this little area. And hopefully it'll give me some up and down definition, because these sages here stay quite low. They don't get more than about 20, 30 centimeters. So this hopefully will give me a little bit more drama here at the front. Now, the other thing I'm going to do for these little baby plants is a handful of my freshly sieved homemade compost just into the soil. This is because these sedums actually like good drainage, and this little raised up part here of the garden bed has better drainage than most of my soil. And because I've got heavy clay, I want to just give it as much of an opportunity to drain away quickly as possible. So we'll give that a bit of a helping hand and put him back in there. And a little bit more compost on that side just to firm him in. And there we go. My first propagated sedum is in the ground. I'll give him a really good water once I get these other ones planted. Another job that I am excited and happy to be getting done is to dig up the last of these leeks. Now, they've been great. They have stayed out all winter, no protection, and we've been eating them the whole time. We've probably picked I'd say 8 or 10 from this batch, and the rest I'm picking now because I need the garden bed. So we can really see the difference between the ones here that I've put the tubes on and the ones that I didn't have enough tubes left, and so they didn't get covered up from the tubes. So these ones have lots of lovely white, let me just peel that back, lots of lovely white flesh. They've got these really long, nice, fleshy deliciousness. And the ones that didn't get a tube, the few that were left over where I didn't quite have enough tubes to do each and every one of them, well, you can see the difference. You can still eat all this green part, so it'll still make a lot of food, but the white, nice, sweet stuff that you really want, so much better. So there's the difference between the ones that have the little pipes to give it protection from the light and those without. I love storing things. I love being able to put extra away like this. These will just get chopped and frozen, probably this evening. But I think that's probably about all we've got time for today. So if you like what we're doing, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And so until next week then, do widzenia.